What is up, guys? Good afternoon. It's your favorite mortgage lender, Abdel Khawatmi, got mortgages. We are going to go over this week's market intelligence briefing. So much to catch up on. Obviously, as most of us have been seeing, rates have been trickling a little bit in the opposite direction. And a big part of it is obviously just the stuff that's occurring overseas, which is, of course, impacting inflation, impacting some aspects of labor, and all that fun stuff. So we're going to go over specifically CPI, Consumer Price Index. And man, it is moving in that opposite direction. If this is the first time you guys are watching our market update, make sure you guys open up our slide deck and follow along step by step. But you'll see here in this chart, we're starting to see inflation tick up 3.8%. But then if you look at the core, which strips out food and energy, obviously it shows at that flat 2.8%, right? Of course, we know that geopolitical friction, right? What is occurring overseas in Iran is obviously causing gas and fuel to start to go up. Of course, combining that with some rising food costs, because it costs money to be able to move and ship some of this food. Food and energy alone accounted for almost 50% of this increase, right? And if we take a look at it, guys, if we look at the core CPI, 2.8%, just an uptick of 0.4%. But if we take a look at the headline CPI, of course, 0.6%. A big part, too, was the wholesale inflation producer price index, which we're expecting, obviously, to tick up. That jumped up almost 6% year over year. Of course, tripling expectations, and a big part, of course, is gas. We take a look at now employment. Headline on the national unemployment, 211,000, again, still relatively low. 1.78 million people are still continuing to collect unemployment. Displaced workers, again, shifting in the opposite direction. We are starting to see, obviously, the Fed is starting to really lose. And I think I just saw, some economic currents. I think I just saw an uptick that potentially we're starting to see maybe a rate hike, actually, believe it or not, heading into 2027. So upward pressure, obviously, inflation is sticky. Consumer and that wholesale inflation continues to persist. Obviously, benchmark interest rate is not going to change. And like I just said earlier, we might even potentially see a rate hike. Of course, this could potentially change, but, some of that labor market strain, of course, next week this week, we'll get some of the unemployment numbers. Of course, we saw a swap now between Jerome Powell. His term has now ended. Kevin Warsh now being confirmed with the Senate, right? June 16 to 17 will essentially be his first meeting, right, officially. So we'll start to see, obviously, what his sentiment is he's going to remain hawkish or dovish in regards to now his new position. Retail sales, again, just up 0.5% in April. If we exclude some of the auto and gas and restaurants, we also saw a 0.5% in the control group, right? Obviously, higher fuel means higher inflation, means higher costs to the consumers. If we take a look at, obviously, on the existing home sales, we're starting to see an uptick, 0.2% month over month. A pretty flat year-over-year number as expected. We're seeing a 4.4 month supply of home, 32 days on the market from 41, which means the houses are still flying off the market, actually faster than they were the prior month. 21% of homes are still being sold over list. 33% still amount to first-time home buyers. And then a key part, again, right, we know that the bond market obviously took a little bit of a beating along with the 10-year Treasury. So we're starting to see if we're going to break through that Fibonacci level, right? Again, so Monday, as you guys know, we got the builder confidence report. Tuesday, we got pending home sales. Wednesday, we'll get the Fed meeting minutes. So we'll see if that impacts the market. And then obviously everything on new home construction data and newest jobless claims. So obviously, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And this is another episode of the Got Mortgages Market Update. Talk to you guys soon.